Good morning, friends of House District 87. This is Scott Esk running for State Representative in House District 87. As you are probably aware, there is a runoff between me and Gloria Banister, and it's been a great experience meeting with all kinds of people in preparation for that runoff and hearing your concerns and your issues. And it was very fun until something happened on Channel 4. Channel 4 looks like they delivered two hit pieces on me, and the fact that I'm in a runoff with somebody who outspent me by an obscene amount and had at least 4 mass mailings compared to my 0 probably had something to do with it. Well, if it were up to me, we would only be talking about issues between Gloria and me. And I probably wouldn't even mention much about her stance on things. I would just mention mine because I'm very passionate about protecting the constituents in House District 87 from a very out of control federal government. We need to get them off our backs. And once we do that, we deal with election integrity problems and things along that line. Then we can also get down to the business of getting Oklahoma government back to basics and just protecting life, liberty, and property, and not having all these boondoggles and wasteful expenditures of our hard-earned tax money. But it wasn't allowed to stay that way. So Channel 4 a few days ago came up with a hit piece on the fact that I had an opinion against homosexuality. Well, does that make me a homophobe? Maybe some people think it does, but as far as I and many of the people, the voters of House District 87 are concerned, it simply makes me a Christian. Christians believe in biblical morality, kind of by definition, or they should. And I'm aware of how homosexuality was handled in the Old Testament. It was commanded by God to put homosexuals to death in the Old Testament, in ancient Israel. And even in the New Testament, in Romans chapter 1, it says that homosexuality is a sin worthy of death. It also mentions several other things that are worthy of death too. And just like I wouldn't be for putting people to death for any of those other sins, I'm not for expanding the death penalty in Oklahoma for homosexuality either. But the fact remains that it's much more offensive knowing what obscene things homosexuals do with each other than it is for somebody to hold a view that it is indecent. And if that's the route you choose, I'm sure not going to try to stop you. But there is a video that I recorded called Scott Esk Sets the Record Straight. And for those of you who are interested, there is help for those who are drifting towards that kind of behavior, who don't want to go that direction. There are many that don't. They're concerned about having those kind of feelings, and of course that's a natural thing. And there is an organization called First Stone Ministries that has helped a lot of people come out of homosexuality, or just get their bearings straight so that they don't enter into that dark way of life. The fact that homosexuality leads to a very much increased suicide rate and rate of violence among those who practice that kind of behavior, that kind of speaks for itself about the destructiveness of that behavior. But regardless, these things were dredged up from 8 years ago when I simply replied to somebody who was talking about that the Pope didn't think that he was in a position to judge concerning homosexuality. He probably is the first Pope who ever said that. But regardless, I responded with what is said in Leviticus 19, that God considered homosexuality such a serious offense that he made it a death penalty, a capital offense in Leviticus 19, I believe it is. And I never mentioned anything about that in any of my talks on anybody's porch, either in 2012 or presently. It's not any of my campaign literature. Uh, these things were brought up by Channel 4, and Channel 4 did it 8 years ago as well. And they dredged up, some things that I believe in, that I wish to uh, deprive those who recruit homosexuals in the public schools their most fertile recruiting grounds and things along that line. And again, this is covered in my video, Scott Sets the Record Straight. But compared to the obscenity of those who responded to me, especially back in 2012 or 2014, there's not much offensive about my opinions. There were some extremely offensive things said to me, and of course the coward that said that they didn't want to be contacted for the most part. A few did. They were just curious about what I had to say, and we had some cordial conversations there, but most of the communication was extremely cowardly and extremely obscene. And we're talking about decent people versus indecent people. I think most of the people in House District 87 are decent people, even the ones that are Democrats. I'm not big on party labels. I think there are some very corrupt Republicans. I think my opponent is very disingenuous when she tries to use these hit pieces to say that she's better than I am, and maybe in the hope of getting votes from me, when she saw that when we were just looking at the issues and where I stand versus where she stands, she couldn't win, and she didn't win. I actually got 1% higher than her in the primary, and that's enough to make some people panic, and it was enough to make me very happy that after all that work, it paid off, and it wasn't at anybody's expense. I just told people at the door that I was for standing firmly between them and an out-of-control federal government. And many people said such things as thank you, or it's about time, or other such things that indicated that they were very happy to see somebody actually come to their door to express such desires to help them out and to get our country back from I would say, the communist grip that we have come under since especially the insurrection that happened on November 3rd, 2020 with the vote and installing a fake president. Now, the latest hit piece that came out from Channel 4 dredged up some really bad memories I had where I fought for my marriage back in 2007 is when it all started, and we had a situation where leaders of a church inexplicably stood for, instead of defending marriage, they defended divorce, and I never did understand that. I'm not going to go into all the details of all the things that were montaged in front of you by Channel 4. If you want to see that, it's sickening to see because it was very unprofessionally done. It was a bunch of sound bites that I guess they wanted to make them sound official, like they were coming straight from court documents, but many of them were not. And court documents don't show what happened in something as involved as a divorce. Just suffice it to say, if I were to have truly been abusive in the relationship I had with my wife at the time that I was hoping to be with me for the rest of my life, I'd have been in jail for violence, and that never happened. The one time I did go to jail was because of trumped up charges by a monstrous individual who is a hypocrite. He's a preacher, but he should never be listened to. His name's Harry Osborne. He preaches at 84th Street Church of Christ. As far as I know, I don't know what happened to him lately, but he actually harassed me so much that I blocked him from communicating with me, and he actually used somebody else's email address to say things that were extremely cruel. And I won't post any of that, but I have made the communications between him and me very much available to those who wanted to investigate. And they, I refuted those things that he said about me, and without going into a lot of painful memories, I'll just say this: I was 100% faithful to my wife the whole time I was with her. There were no other ladies that even came close to coming between us, and that was the case for 10 years after my wife divorced me in a frivolous divorce. I didn't date anybody, but eventually I gave up on her doing the right thing and quitting, rejecting God's pattern for us: one man, one woman for life, raising godly children. That's what I expected to happen as a married man, and that it happened for 15 years, and then things went very much awry after that. I did my best to save the marriage. I also fought very hard for my children, for them to have a father in their lives. There was a time when her name was Pam, when she was interfering with my ability to see my children repeatedly, and I expressed that concern to others in the church there, 84th Street. And by the way, I left the church. I was not kicked out of it. So Channel 4 didn't bother to mention that. There were a lot of things they didn't bother to mention, but they wanted to achieve their effect. And if you are gullible enough to believe, what they say at face value, I guess I can't stop you from being gullible. That's part of my nature. I don't wish to coerce people to believe or disbelieve people. As part of my libertarianism as a candidate for state legislator. But in any case, our boys were homeschooled. They went to homeschool camp every year, and that was the highlight of their year, seeing all their friends from across the nation, from other churches of Christ that came there to, with their families. The whole families were involved in this. It was a beautiful thing. And of course, they were deprived of that after Pam decided she no longer wanted God's arrangement for us. But at any rate, I won't say anything bad about her, but it was just heart-wrenching to see your own wife as your adversary in a courtroom. And as far as everything I've done, I believe I acted honorably. And shame on Channel 4 for dredging all this up and bring back all those painful memories, getting people who've never met me, know nothing about me besides what Channel 4 says about me, giving me such obscene things on my email, especially back in 2014. I can't say enough about how despicable they are for doing that. The Ogles, I used to respect that family name years ago, and apparently Ogles are pretty ubiquitous in the news reporting business, but I cannot have anything good to say about the Ogle that reported this. She did a hatchet job, and she knew she was doing it, and the reason for it was, I'm sure, because I'm a threat to somebody else's victory in the runoff, and I can probably expect more of the same once I get to the November election. But they're going to run out of material is the problem, because those two things probably got me the most notoriety when they were reported on 8 years ago, and they're dredging it up again. And all I can say is it serves as a distraction. If you go to my Facebook, my latest Facebook video besides this one, uh, where it refers to a meeting of the Oklahoma Conservative Political Action Committee, OPAC, and it shows uh, both me and Valerie speaking, and she admits there, after I boldly proclaimed that I wish to stand between my constituents and a very out-of-control federal government, and wish to nullify unconstitutional edicts that come from Washington and not let them be uh, enforced in Oklahoma. She says the opposite. She doesn't like state nullification. She doesn't like government overreach, but she doesn't present any solution to it. And the legislature, frankly, is way too full of people who complain about federal government overreach. But as our freedoms are frittering away at an alarming pace now, they refuse to do anything about it, and leadership is a big problem. So I wish to, once again, proclaim my opposition to that pattern of, I forget the word now, but appeasement towards the federal government. The federal government doesn't need to be appeased. It doesn't deserve such good treatment. It deserves to be to have the Constitution enforced against it, and I'm willing to do that. My opponent, as far as everything I've heard from her, she's not, and that's probably our biggest national emergency, is that we are being taken over by a communist regime that was not elected by any legally cast votes anyway, and I wish to be one of the voices. Hopefully there will be several others that will stand up against that. If Gloria changes her mind about that and decides she wants to do what is needed, more power to her. But as of right now, I think you have a clear choice between us. And I did respect her a lot more before these hit pieces came out, and she went along with the hit pieces and used them to her advantage, rather than decrying the fact that people are dredging up things. I don't know if she had anything to do with reporting things to them or not. They say she had nothing to do with it, but she definitely intends to benefit from it. Well, what do you say we prove them wrong and get me a victory at the runoff, as the one who wants to stand very ferociously for you against a very ferocious communist regime, federal dictatorship that has taken over our land. I thank you for your time, and if you have any questions about this, feel free to email me or contact me. I'm always open to that. No obscenities; those will get deleted very fast. But I appreciate your support, those who have helped me out and who continue to support me despite the attacks that came out against me. It's a jungle out there, but I intend to continue to do what I've been doing and offer help and hope to the oppressed people of House District 87. Thank you, and God bless you in your efforts to keep Oklahoma and America free.